Con.
Alrighty, we are live, or so it says. So we'll give a few seconds for people to get in, obviously, but welcome once again. Let's see, still have the banners up. We don't have the banners up. Uh, welcome to Thrive.
Please say hello in the comments if you are there. We want to hear from you, the audience. Got to do my radio voice.
Yeah, it's necessary. Ticker, ticker, ticker. Boom.
Boom.
There we go. All right. So, well, let's get started here. So, this morning, just a few logistical things before we let people stroll in here. We are trying out some new things starting next week. We will be, gosh, what is wrong with me? I can't think of the times. We will be going live on Friday afternoon in the U.S.
5:30
Yeah,
Eastern is
5:30 Eastern. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So we're gonna be
which we will
doing.
go right up into the EUC community uh,
Yeah, like the
get
happy
together.
hour thing.
Happy hour. Yeah, there you go.
Chris is in the house.
Woo!
Welcome, Chris. Good to see you. Yeah, so that'll be announced, and actually, just right after this, I will update the schedule link. We're actually working on a a feed of calendar links, but mark your calendar for now. Just kind of mark off the 29th at 5:30 Eastern time. That would be
And
what
and if
2:30
you'd like
Pacific.
a link
Oh, great.
to join the happy hour,
Yeah, let us
shoot
know.
us an email, shoot us, tweet. We're not going to send it out publicly because we don't want it bombed, but you get everyone's invited. Just let us know. We'll get it over to you.
Yep, yep.
Put on by Steve Greenberg and Thin Client Computing.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So,
Got to give props where props are due.
indeed, indeed. So, welcome everybody, and this week we're going to be talking about a topic that kind of came up. I can't remember when this came up, but I call it, you know, teaching an old dog new tricks or that sort of thing, or it's more of just how to survive in IT when there's just a constant changes, constant iteration. Uh, we've seen such a huge. Well, here let's make this interesting. So we've seen such a huge influx of DevOps and things like that have really made innovation a lot faster. But that means that old folks like us really need to be up on our game all the time, and you know what? It gets exhausting. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to spend some time talking about that this week.
And I think the topic, and you and I were just discussing this, but I do believe the topic, isn't just for us old guys. I think it's
Sure.
for everybody because there is such a pace of innovation and change in hardware, in software, that we all want to be part of it. We all want to see and play and know all this new stuff, but the human mind can't keep be an expert in everything.
Exactly. So I think too, it's not just being an expert too. It's just even being aware of what it's doing sometimes. I think some of the new features in a lot of the EUC technologies, I mean, that's where Jeff and I are kind of spend most of our time. A lot of this stuff is so feature rich. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
just, hey, there's a security update or something like that, or just a little tweak. Sometimes these are radical shifts in like certain key areas, like how going from TCP to UDP, for example. It's a pretty big idea. It's a pretty big thing, and these things have been kind of slowly iterating in. But when you look at the aggregate over like versions over a point of time, that that can be a pretty big shift. And so if you are kind of hunkered down on a single version, and then you realize, oh, there's something else out there, that can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I've been hearing in the marketplace. A lot of people just, oh gosh, I was to give the well, let's give a Citrix example. So for a time there, it was oh yeah, I'm on ZenApp 5 or ZenApp 6 or ZenApp 6.5 or that sort of thing. 6.5 has been the one that's been a big thing, and so shifting now to sorry, I hit the wrong button. Shifting now to some of the more modern platforms for that, people are like, how do I learn this, or what do I need to know, that sort of thing, and they have anxiety. Things are supposed to be easier, but it's causing anxiety and not wanting to move forward. And I'm actually, interestingly enough, seeing a bit of an attrition. I'm seeing people leave the marketplace because they're so frustrated at that. And so, yeah.
Well, I think there's a couple things. I mean, I don't like picking on Citrix directly, but they've been in this game the longest. So when DJ, you and I started, I mean, it was Metaframe. It was Metaframe, ran on top of terminal services, or it was, just straight up a Citrix NT351 that was a Citrix build of Windows. But either way, that's all it was, really. And yeah, there were little add-ons here and there, like Video Frame and stuff, but it didn't change what you were doing in any sort of radical way. I mean, it was Metaframe first and Presentation Server, and it had some add-ons. There was Resource Manager, Install Manager. God, man, I can't believe I remembered that.
Yeah.
So, but it kind of expanded, but it was still very much all core. Now, when you look at Citrix products, you're right. It's much more feature rich. But that now also includes a whole bevy of products just within Citrix that all tie in: PVS, MCS, NetScaler, WEM, and Citrix App Layering, and all this other stuff that is technically ancillary to the core product. And so it's very hard because, I mean, PVS has its own, I mean, that's a big product when you get right down to it.
Sure.
NetScaler, a lot of these guys don't know NetScaler because they're not networking people. They're not networking. They don't deal with networking to that level. I mean, we all know enough about networking to be dangerous and to get our jobs done. But to get to that level of going in and setting that stuff up. So it's a whole new, now, I think if you look at ZenApp or virtual apps and desktops, whatever they're calling it this week, the core product, it's an interesting time frame because you mentioned 6.5. Everybody loved 6.5, I think, for the most part.
Sure.
And it had great features, great, everything. People enjoyed it. And then when Citrix came out with 7, they changed from IMA to, what is it, FMA? Yeah. And like 90% of the features disappeared.
Yeah.
And it's taken years for them. And I'm not even quite sure they're at feature parity yet to where 6.5 was. I think it's obviously close, but holy cow. I mean, like you said, you've had 6 people on 6.5 for years longer than they should have been, but they had no choice because the features that they needed just were not there. So I think it's a twofold thing that with Citrix, at least, you've got going on there. One is that the surrounding products that they bundle in has expanded greatly, and those are much more complex than they used to be. And then you've got hey, we've released a new product that doesn't have 90% of our features that you're used to. So nobody moved, nobody learned. And all of a sudden now they're at this point where, okay, we have to move because 6.5 is end of life. They're close to feature parity, but it's also very different in how we were doing things before. There's not a lot of straight, going from 6.5 to 7.5 in a straightforward manner. Because as they've added new features, they've changed nomenclature, they've changed the way that these things, do work and whatnot. So yeah, it's I think it's been a difficult ride for Citrix admins. Yeah, I don't think that's it.
And I think also the thing about that is, you talk about feature parity, and the other thing that comes up in my mind is, gosh, some things just need to go. There's not necessarily like this universal thing where all things should stay. In fact, I think sometimes paring things back a little bit is kind of smart, because it reduces the amount of things you're focused on. I do hear a lot from people that they kind of get anxious is probably the interesting word to say there, but honestly, it is just kind of frustrated that it's like, there's so much to do. Do I have to learn all this? Especially when you keep, whether it's VMware or Citrix or even
any company
they keep changing the names of this stuff. Well, it's just like, yeah, gosh, it's yeah, is it actually a transition? Truly, well, maybe. Sometimes it is just a, it's a, when it's kind of forced on you in a way, is what it feels like. It's just like, well, this was working, that sort of thing. Well, the reality is that the world is moving faster than it was working.
Yeah.
That's the thing we have to face here, and that we have to realize that, gosh, just because the names change and things like that, staying aware of this is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, it really is hard to stay on top of that, especially. I can tell you from my world, I actually was, when I was doing consulting work, full time, and I'm still in consulting work, obviously, but when I was doing it full time, I mean, I could be going like 50, 60-hour weeks and really get into this pattern of just repetition, of just doing it over and over and over and over again. And as a consultant, you're kind of focused on leading practices and that sort of thing. Well, what happens when there's new features and the customer starts asking about new features, and you're like, I haven't touched it. In fact, this was, I shouldn't. No, I'm going to go ahead and say it. There was a time at Citrix where I was out in the field and a customer asked me about a product that I wasn't even aware of. It was embarrassing, but at the same time, it's how you spin it. I mean, this is what kind of separates the pros from the amateurs here, I guess, in a sort of way. It's like you get faced with a situation like that, and you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I can't remember how I handled that yet. It was more of like, well, we can talk about that, but let's focus in on your core here. It's like,
did you look like deer in the headlights? Just
no, I think it
That's
really
good.
was kind of one of those things. Well, you got to understand that, for me especially, I've been trained in how I react to facial expressions, that sort of thing. I spent some years as a kind of a counselor, and trained as not like a professional like counselor, but background in psychology and things like that. And I did some like peer-based counseling and things like that. And one of the things you're trained to do is not to react when things come at you. Because you're getting bombarded with stuff sometimes. I mean, about like, kids running away from home and things like that, or just various, hey, I sliced my arm and things like that. That there's things that I dealt with from that angle, and so I was kind of trained, I guess you could say, to not overreact to certain things, and to just have a stone-faced expression. And that really is something. Actually, that'd make an interesting exercise sometime to go through with people, just to train them to respond that way. But that was kind of ingrained. So yeah, when it comes to new features and things like that, similar kind of thing where I just kind of say, and it's like,
well, I mean, in I think going back to week one, it's okay to say, you know what, I understand. Yeah, I mean, you say, you know what, I've heard about it just like you. I need to look into it more. I haven't had the time. I will get back to you. We can talk tomorrow, next week, whatever. I mean, I think that's a perfectly, especially with a new product or a new acquisition. Nobody can expect you. I mean, I'm sure they do, but nobody should realistically expect somebody to know, especially a consultant where you're on site all the time or working with other people. That's difficult to do, to keep up with it.
It is. And I think
and truthfully, that's what sales engineers are for.
Yeah. Yeah, but actually that was, in this particular case I'm thinking of, that actually was the problem, is that a sales engineer had brought it up. And I just flat out wasn't aware of it. In fact, in this particular case, what it was something that they weren't actually supposed to talk about yet.
Oh, nice. That's even better.
So I was blindsided twice. I was like, wait, I just genuinely did not know about it. I actually did. I was so engrossed in what I was doing with assessments and whatnot that I just wasn't aware of it. But the thing is with that too, you can make the answer of latest and greatest isn't always greatest. It really does amount to, sometimes it's like, can you be, a year or two back in your technology and still be viable? The answer is absolutely. In fact, I think that's why we see such a large adoption of, even though Microsoft is now, like, they led the charge on this, and now they're fighting back against it, which I don't understand. That concept of a long-term servicing branch, it makes a lot of sense, but it's something that, for some reason they're fighting against this, and I'm like, why? Why are you fighting this? Just in the enterprise, this should be your default answer. You should never have,
and
versions out there. That's ridiculous.
And I think you've nailed it. Is it's not always just the pace of innovation, especially now, because a lot of companies have turned to the quicker turnaround, the quicker release schedule, and they, expect you to only be one or two versions behind at most. And when these versions are coming out, like Microsoft, twice a year, I mean, what was the original? Like, you could only be a year behind or 2 years or some crazy thing.
With what was it called? Not subscription advantage, right? It was.
Well, but like their support was, you had to be up to date, and you could only be
that
a year behind or whatever it was. And then they extended it, I think, now to 3 years or whatever. They finally did that. But even then, it's that companies typically move slowly. I don't even know why I got this, but some recruiter sent me, hey, do you want a job doing COBOL? Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know COBOL, first of all, and why are we doing COBOL again? It's like, why? We talk about these old Win32 applications. Take a look at some of those mainframe applications. I mean, there's so many moving parts here, right? I mean, you've got the companies that just don't, or believe they can't move off of a platform, a piece of software, whatever. Then you've got those that just refuse to do it. And then you've got the vendors pushing for companies to move faster. We're in a really crazy situation right now. And and that's why in the end, the Microsofts, the Citrix, they want people in the cloud, because then they have more control over the pace of change, or they feel they will. unfortunately, we still have Windows 95 apps out there, or Windows 2000 servers still running business critical applications. It's insane how people just latch onto these things and don't update, and then now they're stuck in this situation where I don't even know. I don't, they don't. It's a disconnect and I could rant on this for a while. It's a disconnect between IT and the company.
Yeah, that's true.
Or the rest of the company, because it's been a fight. It has always been a fight for whatever reason between IT and the rest of the company. Right. And it shouldn't be a fight. The problem is we as IT people believe that we are right and we know what's best.
Yeah.
Okay. That may be great, but in life, the best doesn't always win. Betamax versus VHS, HD, DVD versus Blu-ray, there's so many examples. It's not always the best tech wins or the best ideas win, but there needs to be much more of a partnership between IT and the business in making these decisions. And I think because of that fight, a lot of that software, a lot of that, hey, we need to invest in keeping this software moving forward, modern, that type of thing. And so, I could go on forever on that. It's a classic battle. We've all been there. And I think part of it's the business, part of it's the rest of the company, part of it's the IT attitude, typically. So
it is, and I think a lot of it too is, and this is a writer downer moment for those of you in the audience. What it comes down to is new features without a good why behind them, without a good understanding of what this does for the business, is worthless. And I think in easily 60% or more of the times there's anxiety about new features, I think it really is just that there's a disconnect between what the business wants and needs and what we're willing to provide. And so if we don't kind of get into that why, if we don't understand, okay, this is something that's very important because of this, if it's something that's just as simple as, okay, here's a great example of this. When it comes to working from home, this is something that we're currently in a season of a lot of this. We're starting to see some downward trend, but it's not anywhere near what it's going to be for quite some time. We've been talking about this. It's a thing, right? Work from home, you don't really get a better why than that. In fact, this is something I've been talking about all month. I've got one more webinar about this, by the way. It's going to be happening next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Yeah, Tuesday on the 26th at 5 o'clock. Here, I'll just put a link in the chat here, or in the comments about this. I know that both Chris and Ken have attended this, and they can put in the comments if they thought it's worth attending as well. But the link is ctxpro.com/webinar. And one of the things I'm talking about in this is that we can't just keep our I'm talking with my hands, so I'm gonna do this thing. I'm talking with my hands. So we can't just keep the kind of the baseline stuff anymore, and we can't even do some of the optimizations that we've done the same kind of way. We have to adapt and say, you know what, there's a base that we have to bring our expectations down a little bit, because we're in a situation where, hey, look, we're working from home now. This causes us to have some very specific things that are going on, and we need to adapt to what the business needs, not what we think is absolutely best. In other words, this is not a hill to die on kind of a thing. We get into that a lot. And honestly, like I said, as somebody that's made a living with doing things the right way, I'm about to get into another tangent. I should be writing these things down, so I just come back to them later. But it kind of works, right? So when you get really good at a process and you've spent a lot of time building up a process, it's really hard to feel like you have to let that go. And that is exactly what's happening here, is that you have, the business is trying to adapt, and the business is trying to move on, and we're still trying to make it this perfect thing. And the funny thing about it is that, a lot of EUC vendors in general, and I'm not talking about just Citrix and like VMware and can you call Microsoft the EUC vendor at this point? I'm not even sure anymore. They are.
Yes and no. I mean,
You
they
can't
do
really have
so
it.
much. It's why not? I mean, terminal services. That's
There are so many other partners out there, and we talked about this in our little supplement um, earlier this week. Is that there are so many people out there doing so much from a vendor standpoint of just adding on to that, and they're innovating, and the core is innovating. So you're getting innovations from Microsoft. You're getting innovations at the hypervisor level with like VMware and whatnot. You're getting innovations at the delivery angle with Citrix, and you just get all these layers on top of it, and then you got other vendors that are doing other things on top, and this is like this series of innovations and features and like that, and it's just mind-boggling. But if you are stuck trying to make it perfect, then you'll never get going.
yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And so
Yep.
if you are stuck with, oh, well, this is the right way to do it, and wow, I can't believe how often I hear that exact phrase in information technology. This is the way to do it. This is the way it should be done. And I'm not just talking about DBAs for all of you that are thinking this is only say this. Zing.
Oh, it's very. You are very, very. This is gospel right here. You are right. It's funny because in the industry we are in, technology, the pace of change is obviously just crazy, insane fast.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know how many times I talk to tech people, and we are the most. I've planted my flag in the ground. I'm not changing. It's like, what? How can you be that way? We live in a world of constant change, whether it's tech or not, but it's driven by tech for the most part. And I think when somebody says we're not going to change, or I don't know, I'm saying it badly, but I guess my example, to use an example, are we've all heard those companies over the last few years that have said no cloud, never ever.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you don't say that about any piece of technology, new, old, whatever, because in the end, you will end up doing something probably with that technology, especially cloud. It doesn't mean moving your entire data center into the cloud. It could be you move to Salesforce. It could be you, whatever. There's a million things that are cloud apps. And I think part of it is people don't think of them that way. I think people think cloud, they think immediately, well, I'm going to lift and shift all my workloads. That's actually, to me, very small part of cloud. There's so much more to cloud than just what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. That infrastructure, that the VMs, those types of things. It's the services, it's the big data, it's the AI, it's all that other stuff. That is cloud to me. So it's we fight over these little things about workloads and all this other stuff, and to me, it's a hybrid thing. You're going to have some workloads in the cloud. You're going to have some workloads, on-prem. There are going to be companies that are going to go wholesale up, and there are going to be companies that will never move a piece of infrastructure into the cloud, but they'll still be using cloud services. To say no, never to a technology is just outright bad to me, saying it nicely.
It is. I mean, and Yeah, just to say no, just for the sake of it's almost like for the sake of saying no, you know.
Yeah.
And but I will say though that I've talked to several CIOs over the last few years that um, they say no because they want to be convinced. Um, their first answer is always no. And I can't remember. I think it was a book or something like that guided this pretty strongly. And you know what? I can't disagree completely with the wisdom of this. There is a point where the default answer has to be no, and that kind of filters out a lot of the things. And for us as as people in technology, not technology people, we have to recognize that we have to think like they think. We have to recognize what their needs are, not
Hmm.
not just not just be this us against them kind of
Yeah.
mentality of just
Well, and
I don't want to ask this because they'll just say no.
yeah, well, I think there's a difference between someone saying no and someone saying we will never use that.
Right.
To me,
Yeah.
they're, saying no to something. Yeah, I mean, am I going to move to cloud? No, not. Maybe they mean not right now. But if they
Yeah.
come out and say, "Nah, we're never going to move to cloud,"
Yeah.
if I get that response, I'm going to say, I'm going to think in my head that this is a lost cause at that point.
Yeah.
It may not be, but the way things are phrased is extraordinarily important. And if you give that vibe off that you are resistant
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to that, and not just from a, hey, I'm running a business, there is that difference of attitude and wording and everything that can give the impression, if nothing else.
Yeah. God, I had a thought on that and it's totally off into the cloud is what
Yeah.
yeah. But honestly, yeah, it was something along the lines of I was thinking about that whole stubbornness thing and then where we get kind of
Oh, we are stubborn.
we are we are and it's largely because let's talk about what this really is, okay? We get stubborn, we get stuck in our ways because we want to feel wanted, right? We
Yep.
want to feel important. We want to feel confident. That's important to us. And I think that's something where we can't. I'm sorry. We can't just like pretend that's not going to be there. We can't just say, "Look, that's not real. That's not really me." That sort of thing. If we
Mm-hmm.
keep denying that, then honestly, we're just going to be stuck in this mode of it's always going to be us against them kind of mentality,
Yeah.
and we're always going to be feeling like it really does feel like the world's against us when it's like that. It's like, oh, I hear this all the time, like, oh, Citrix changed their names on stuff, or it's like, oh, they're changing things again, and really, when it comes down to is like that fear of if they change this and things have moved on, then all of a sudden now I am less important and I'm not as valuable to the company as I once was. I see that a lot, and that's really something that I think needs some addressing. Um, the other thing about that kind of falls right into that. I was gonna put up a picture, but I just realized the the software doesn't let us do that for this type of software. I can't put up a picture of this, um, but this is something that I actually talk about in my next book that I'm almost done with, by the way. Is that sometimes we get stuck in a technology and we kind of make it so that won't move because we're fearful of losing our jobs if they move on. And so that's something where what I talk about in the book is when there's a piece of software or something like that that's latched to a certain person. It's like they're maybe the only ones that actually know that piece of technology, and that's just it's not fair to the company, first of all. And a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gosh, how many times have we seen pieces of software that people are like, "What is this? What is it? What does it do?" And they don't know anything about it. And it's because that one person held on to that so tight and they didn't let anybody know anything about it. And they were always like, it's got to be me. I've got to be the person doing this. And they just get to this point where they just get so frustrated. And next thing you know, they're angry at the company for the world that they've created.
Yeah.
It's not even it's not even a dialogue anymore. It's just that they get frustrated and eventually they leave. And
Yep.
I think that is something that it deserves discussing, because it is a side effect. There's one thing I've learned in my life, and there's probably more than one, but one thing I'll bring up is that we tend to shift the focus incorrectly. We tend to think that a problem is what's right in front of us. And to use an analogy here, let's do this. If I put my hand up right here, you can't see me anymore. You see the problem, right? But what's actually over here that you can barely see anymore is what the actual problem is. And the problem is me, right? I think I see the problem this way. The actual problem is my mindset, the way I'm approaching things, and my inability to see that. And so, are we really ready for true confessions here?
We need like music going in the background when we do true confessions.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Man, I can hear the music now. Yeah, we'll get to that point. There's some things I've been thinking about being able to do that, like a virtual camera kind of stuff we can do. But anyway, I digress. I think the big piece of this for me has been, well, feeling that frustration of things are moving. I don't want to be. It's not just learning the new technology. It was like people think of you as an expert in the technology, right? It's like you're the guy that knows this stuff. And I'm so fatigued. I'm like, I can't do both. I can't know this stuff well enough to be an expert in it and constantly be learning new stuff. It was honestly, and so last June, July, I think, that time frame, I had myself a nice little breakdown. It was pretty rough there for a bit. Just because I realized I'm like, I don't like this anymore. It's like, I don't even enjoy this anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the technology. Again, the technology is, this thing. This is what I see as the problem. What actually the problem is this guy right here. That was the problem. It wasn't that the technology was bad. It wasn't the technology or anything like that. It was just my unwillingness to move myself forward and unwillingness to learn new things and that sort of thing. That's the actual problem, right?
Well, and it is hard for people in general, to do that sort of self-discovery, that enlightenment, if you will. It is hard. I know I dealt with that for years, and especially when you're young. You get a fresh job, you're trying to make your mark. You don't want to screw up, but you don't want to be, so you do tend to grab onto something and just hold on with it for dear life. But nowadays, you can do that if you choose, but the better way to go is not to do it, is to, help your admins, help, or, your colleagues, help them get better, help them know the products, have them reciprocate back to you, as much as you can. But in the end, no one person can be an expert on everything. And especially as IT organizations, as companies, do more with less, the pressure is just getting greater on IT staff. And so that puts a lot of pressure on them. They start getting the pressure in their heads, and that's where, breakdowns happen, is that, you feel you got to be able to do all of this stuff, when in reality, you don't. And, I think we've all been there, from that breakdown standpoint where you just like hang your head down and you're like, anymore, I can't keep up with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I also think once you realize and you understand that, you know what, I can't keep up with all of this.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you don't know anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're not an expert, and you don't have to be an expert in those things. That's why we have people doing those things, right? That are networking, that are, whatever. That's their jobs.
Yeah. And again, just like I said the other week, it's like, look, the reality is that you have value intrinsically in yourself. Your value is not defined by what you do. Your value is not defined by, what technology or how well you implement it. Your value is in you. And if you recognize that, I guarantee that you will be more successful in your career. If you can really hone in on that, because it's like you say, it's like, things are going to change whether we like it or not.
Yep.
In fact, I don't think any of us at our core think that things aren't going to change. We know that it's not, gosh, I hate to always have this image in my head, but early on in my IT career, there were some folks that I worked with for a short time that were just so stubborn and so just honestly like the guys that had the punch card background and that had to learn Fortran and didn't even like that, that that kind of mentality, like, things keep changing and it's that curmudgeon, is that the right word? But oh, hey, Paul's saying I suck at audio. Gosh, you'd think I'd be better at this. I think I have a button for that.
Well, yeah, I should be the one you're hearing, not DJ.
Try that. See if that's any better.
Oof. Now I got to turn it down.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. That's fine. I didn't really move it all that much. Got some adjusting to do. But
we're figuring it out, people. We're figuring it out.
It's turns out this is a live broadcast, not another thing. But that totally derailed me.
Well, I've been derailed too. I had this whole thought I was going to go on about, because we were talking about tech and knowing everything. Techies, us.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I've been in interviews with companies for like a sales engineer job, right? You're supposed to sell the product.
Mm-hmm.
Most companies I've talked to, I believe, obviously my opinion, are looking for the wrong thing. A lot of times they're looking for somebody that knows the product, can just jump right in and do it.
Yeah.
To me, that's the easiest part. That's to learn. I'm a tech. I can learn software, hardware.
Yeah.
That's what I've done all my life. And that's what we do constantly, whether we realize it or not. Whether we're stubborn or not, we're still learning, even though we may not realize it.
Yeah.
The hardest part is doing what we're doing here, and that is being able to speak and articulate as I'm stumbling over words and we're forgetting our trains of thought. But not all IT people can do this. Whether it's an inability that they can't or they just don't want to. It's a stereotype, but I believe it is a true overall stereotype. Obviously, not everybody, and that doesn't mean they're any better or any worse than anyone else. It's just they know where they want to be.
Yeah.
So it's and I see it, and then I see the disaster that happens. A few months later. The company's looking for another sales engineer because they hired the techie, but they hired a guy that couldn't explain the value of the software. not in a way that neneeds to be done.
And I think that, I remember having a conversation with, I'm always so bad about like saying people's names without having cleared doing so. But anyway, I had a conversation with a senior supervisor type person at Citrix for the sales engineers. Let's put it that way. And one of the things that they said was the problem is we get people that basically want to be consultants. Yep. And they're trying to be a sales engineer, and it doesn't work like that. You really have to be somebody that is more that knowing why. You're not necessarily knowing exactly how to deploy this, and that's really right. That's what a consultant's job is, right? It's something they should be doing. And so it's not like you need to know everything about it. You need to know why it exists. You need to know how to fit that into a good use case. Now, you might need to know how to stand up a proof of concept, but
which is different than going into production.
Very different. And your job is not to show people, and this is the problem. It's like, you want the quickest way to be fired as a sales engineer. Let me go ahead and just tell you how to do that. Go tell people what they should be doing. That's the quickest way to get fired as a sales engineer. Tell people what they should be doing. That's not your freaking job. Okay. It's just not. What your job is to identify for the customer what would be a good fit and help them understand that as a trusted advisor, not telling them what to do or how to configure it, that sort of thing. That's just not your job.
And I don't care what a straight up salesperson says. You don't say yes to everything.
No.
I mean, my God, I run into that with salespeople, and it's disastrous in the end.
Well,
hey, you promised me it could do this.
Exactly. And this probably is a discussion for another day, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
but honestly, I think one of the things too is that you can't expect your customer to know what your job is. You can't expect the customer to know that there's, various aspects of your company. They don't know that there's a salesperson and a sales engineer and a consulting engineer and all these support person. They don't know the difference. What they know is, you are the vendor. You're the person. So they're going to ask you for everything unless you tell them no.
Yep.
So yeah, you're exactly right. You know what? And that really is true of a lot of the new technologies and things like that too. I deal with this every now and then where we find that IT teams will take on too much because they don't know how to say no. And dang it comes right back to the same thing, doesn't it? If we think that if we say no, we're going to be fired. We think that if we say no, that they're going to just move on to somebody else. And it's this scarcity thinking that we're not important and we're replaceable and that we're non-essential, I guess is the new way.
Well, and I think there's two levels to that. There's one, there's the grunts, right?
Sure.
It's some of that. I think a lot of that also comes down to their manager, their director, being able to stand up and say, hey, if DJ says, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult or it just can't be done or whatever, you need that support, because it shouldn't be up to the admin to, it shouldn't be up to the admin to defend themselves.
No.
It's really up to the manager to back them up and either help them defend themselves or get the information, get the reasoning, and they do that. That's one, because in the end, the manager needs to be able to trust what his people are doing. And if they come back and say this, now, granted, in the end, it may just be completely overridden. But I think a lot of the problem with IT in corporations is that there isn't always that support. There isn't always that trust between management. It might be manager, it might be director, it might be whatever. But in the end, you need them to be able to back you up on those things.
Yeah.
And again, it may be completely overridden, and you may just have to do it anyway. And as I've been told from things like basic training, ruck it and suck it, baby. It's you got to do it.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the other part about this too is um, there are some soft skills that are very, very lacking in IT right now.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be hammering this home. This is going to be on a soapbox for a while. Just hunker down, get ready for this, folks. That's what it's going to be. But the reality is that we don't know how to say no the right way, and I encounter this so often. Now, I will admit this is getting a little bit better, but it's not us that have gotten better. It's actually management that's gotten better about this. But learning how to accept that something is beyond feasible, and here's the key. Let me key on this. So if you have a manager that's saying we need this, and you have capabilities that are maybe over here somewhere, just kind of just slightly off camera, you just don't have that capability quite yet. You're close, but not quite there yet. One of the things you need to recognize is that they don't know that. They don't understand. They don't fully understand what your capacity is. And so if you are focused on just saying no because you just can't handle more, and you just finally snap and you say, no, we can't do that. That is not going to get you anything. But if you actually explain to them exactly why things are, and not in technical ways, you do not want to beat them over the head with how much you know. In fact, what you want to do is get them to say no for you. That's really the key here is making sure that they are empowered by what you're saying. So you're basically turning your no into a yes. That's a soft skill that really is, like I said, that might seem completely foreign, but trust me, it's something you can learn, you can practice of hearing them, understanding their need, saying back to them why this might be a challenge, and letting them kind of make that decision. If IT management makes the decision, that makes it a lot easier on you because you haven't been that point of resistance. You've enabled them to see the best possible option, and that makes you more valuable every
If
single
I
time.
can learn those skills, anyone can.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I have seen, honestly, I've spent long enough mentoring other consultants and junior techs, and even in that regards, even some old dogs that I had to teach some new tricks. And I've done that enough to know that it is actually possible, but it does take some purposeful practice, and you have to, it's like Simon Sinek says, you have to start with why. You can't just, because I said so does not work in IT anymore. It used to. It used to work when everybody thought this was just like this mysterious thing that only 5 people in the galaxy freaking understand. That was a thing back then. Hey, you know what? That's not true anymore. So the reality is that IT has actually become a true business tool. There are more people in information technology than there ever have been, ever. And the lines have blurred so much where, I mean, it used to be like you ended up with like the CFO, kind of the head of IT, that sort of thing,
Yep.
And it shouldn't be a big surprise that, CIOs usually have a heavy financial role, but we're seeing shifts even within that of saying, there's people that are technology focused that report directly to the board or report directly to the CEO, that sort of thing, or are at even almost the same level as the CEO. You have the chief technology officers and information officers and things like that are, board level people, C-level. That wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so you have to recognize that IT is all about business, and you have to think in that same kind of way. Otherwise, all these new changes, everything that comes up is going to blindside you. You're going to get pissed off and you're going to quit.
Well, and I think the side that I think a lot of people need to realize is IT is there to help the company run and do their whatever their business is. They're there to help the company make money so that you have a job and the company continues its success. It's not an us against them. It's we're all in this together so that we can all enjoy, the fruits of our labor. And I know that's a grandiose way of looking at it. But in the end, if you're constantly fighting with the organization, you are probably doing something wrong. You shouldn't be fighting with them all the time. There's always going to be fights. But in the end, you are there to serve the needs of the business. And I've talked about this stuff before. I think the classic example is EUC. When EUC first started, a lot of it was simply, hey, we know best. We're going to implement this, and this is the way we're going to do it. And the end user is going to like it or not. I don't care.
Yeah.
Now there's a huge shift, and I do believe this is for the better, in that, we need to be able to make the end user productive, and that means we have to make them happy. And you need to be able to sell, the soft skills. I wrote a blog I did my first video on this, the marketing to end users.
Yep.
You have to be able to sell to the end users. End users don't care about the technical aspects of a technology. They want to know, how is this going to make my life easier? How is it going to make me more productive? What is this going to do for me?
Yeah.
They don't care what it does for you on the back end. They don't care that it's switching from TCP to UDP and you're going to get, that's irrelevant to them. That may be the reason that they're going to see better performance of an application. Things will get done. It's not dumbing it down, but it's giving them the information that affects them directly.
Yeah, letting them be empowered to make the decision and be informed. To
help them understand, because if they understand why changes are coming down and they understand it, they are more likely to buy into those changes.
Exactly.
And not fight you when these changes come along. I really believe IT needs to be a better marketing department.
Yes.
Like I said, the video is, I've seen organizations that have had these huge marketing campaigns around moving from physical to virtual desktops.
Yeah.
Never once did you ever hear the word virtual desktop. May have been desktop, but you definitely never heard virtual. They had, banners and they'd give them new equipment like a monitor and a keyboard and mouse, to make it feel like they're getting something out of it.
I think there's a lot to that, because honestly, in terms of getting into that, as far as that goes, I mean, I don't know why there's a scene from the IT crowd that's popping into my head.
Yeah.
That's the negative side of this, but there was a scene, they call it Project Icarus, and they're applauding everybody but the IT people, right? And that's mocking, but honestly, I have seen the opposite. What I've seen is actually when a project code name or whatever it is marketed well, who becomes the celebrities when it really works is the IT people. They really do. And I've seen people held up publicly and celebrated, and people that didn't have a respect for what was going on previously, because of good marketing and good things like that, they bought in, and the IT people became the celebrities with that. But I guess the other side of that is, if you're willing to embrace why it's important, then you're much more able to be that kind of celebrity kind of thing. It kind of makes you feel good about it. And you know what? I think that's good. I think that's good to feel like you've contributed something and you've bought into something. I think that actually is very, very healthy.
Well, and I think it's a better way to be critical to an organization than the hoarding of the knowledge of something. Because one, you're personable, people like you, you've got results that people see and appreciate, sitting there go, oh no, this software is mine. I must be the only one that manipulates it. They won't fire me. Guess what? They'll fire you. Oh, they will.
Yeah.
But if you're an accomplished, successful employee, you're a lot harder to let go.
It's true. Yeah, it's funny actually. I talk about this in the book here. Here, let's put up a link here. So this is something in the bonus chapter that I talk about, kind of the two sides of that. One side is the project that ran really well. Another side was the project that ran really badly. And when you have that kind of person that's hanging on to things and not willing to say no specifically, or say no to the wrong things, the example is a project, and these are actual two project examples of the same basic scenario that happened in two places. And the first one was a company that wanted to do a migration, and we'll get the specifics, but basically it's easy. It's an easy migration. And so this person that is, wasn't really paying attention, they got over their own heads and said, oh, it'll just take a week, I'll just do it over the weekend and no problem, right? That sort of thing. And so they do that. They just do it in production. No testing, nothing like that. I know everybody's like, what? Never,
but that never happens.
Everybody tests. Yeah. So that was brutal. But anyway, the reality was everything seemed fine until things just really weren't fine. And the reality is, if they had been thinking in terms of a business process, and I'm not sure this is actually going to come out on the camera or not, but that's kind of my methodology here. That's the way I look at things. And I've changed the wording of this very much on purpose. You'll notice the very first thing that's up there is understand. I used to call that assess, that sort of thing. And the reason I've made that into understand is because I've realized that really is the crucial thing about this, is that you really do have to actually understand how this stuff works. Otherwise, you're not going to really be successful at it. You're just going to be in deployment mode all the time, basically, and you're never really going to understand why things failed. Now, the flip of this is the people that actually did test things out well, and that sort of thing. That's the admin. There's actually more than just an admin in this case, but mid deployment, he actually went on vacation in the middle of the deployment. Whereas the other person that was holding on so tight, and it's like, it's my thing, I can't, let anybody else in this. And they were working like literally, 12 to 14 hour days, never getting any sleep. I'm willing to bet they probably got divorced. I mean, honestly, it's just like life ruining stuff just because they weren't willing to just be part of the business. Yeah. They were just wanting to be in their own little world. And that really was the core of that. So that's the little behind the scenes that I don't say actually in the book, but that was in that scenario. That's exactly what happened, is that this person was, they held off too long on the upgrade to begin with. I mean, that's that they didn't want to learn what it was. And so they just said, okay, what does it take? Well, it's easy. It's an upgrade. Okay, fine. Just do it. We'll just do it. It was that kind of, they didn't take the time to understand all the implications of it. They just did it because they were essentially just angry. It's just like, when you get into the psychology of that, it really is like, what do they call that? Self-fulfilling prophecy, where you unconsciously self-sabotage yourself, make things really bad for yourself. You don't even realize you're doing it, but that is something that is real, right? That's something that actually does happen. And so, I hate it. I really do. But that is the reality sometimes. If we're stuck in this mode of never wanting to change, that can lead to even worse things down the road. So it's something that we actually do need to deal with and say, if I can just understand why this is, then, why this makes sense, then we're much less likely to go down a path of nastiness.
Yeah. And that's the key word, I think, is, a lot of times we get it stuck in our heads that things need to be done certain ways. And when we hear whether, as a consultant or a sales engineer or part of the admin staff, maybe you joined a new company or whatever, say, hey, yeah, we do it this, and this way. And you don't understand. A lot of times we just come out like, why would you do it that way?
Yeah.
That's not the question, or at least not the tone. You do want to ask why, so you understand, because maybe you do have a better solution. But if you don't understand why they're doing something, you will never be able to sell the solution.
Yeah.
And I know from a sales engineer perspective, that's just that's a huge piece of it. Is, like you said, it's not just doing an assessment. Anyone can assess an environment. You have to understand the why they're doing these things, because it could be any reason at all. I mean, I've walked into situations where I know in my head I'm going, oh my God, that's just stupid. But you ask why, or hey, tell me why this way, and then they explain it to you, and you're like, wow, that does make sense. It makes perfect sense. Why they're not doing it in industry standard, or what we consider to be a standard.
Yeah.
What I've realized, DJ, we have gotten completely off topic about keeping track of knowledge.
Yes and no. I think it all ties in.
I do want to say something about it, though, is, as simple and basic as this can be, thank God for the web, and thank God for search engines, Google, Bing, I don't care, whatever.
Yeah.
It really does make it so that you don't have to know everything. Be an expert in everything. And I think you and I, sorry, I just want to finish with this. I think you and I talked about this before, and I use an example, Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he's talked about this, is that, he is an expert, don't get me wrong. But his words, if he's going to be doing a presentation or a talk or whatever, he doesn't just get out of bed, go to wherever, and just start speaking. If he's got an hour-long presentation or, whatever, he will spend 10 times that amount of time preparing and researching and making sure. And that's how this all works.
Yeah.
Nobody wakes up, walks in, and says, boom, hey, all right, there are people, but we're talking norms here. Yeah. There's no way. You have, so you spend a lot of time preparing, and that could be, again, sales engineer, because that's what I know very well right now. You go into a hospital, you go into a manufacturer, you spend the time understanding not specifically their environment, but healthcare, the hospitals in the area, what's going on in manufacturing. If you're going to Boeing, you better have some idea of, the airline industry, or what, so you have to prepare yourself for whatever you're going to be going into. Doesn't mean you're going to be 100% prepared, but you will be much better prepared than having to sit back and like, you make airplanes? I didn't know that. And that's happening in the industry. No, you should know some of that. At least have a cursory idea of what's happening in the industry, so that you can talk directly to them about how your product would help in that industry, in that business.
Yeah, it's true. And like we're saying, that's not just exclusively to, it's not a skill set that's just exclusive to sales.
Yep.
Like we're saying, that is actually something it's important. Actually, I'm actually trying to think if I'm going to put my foot in my mouth, but I'm fairly certain I have a section on this in the next book, the next series as well. But it's about how IT needs to be better about selling, basically, to management. A good sales engineer, by the way, and a good salesperson will equip the IT department or the IT people that they're talking to actually sell this to management on their behalf.
Yep.
A good one will do that. a good, and I see the back and forth of this so often that it's almost easier to describe the bad than the good. The bad is the ones that, demand, we need this, and it costs $3 million. But I literally saw this about a year ago, that somebody laid down a package and said, I know this costs $3 million, but if you don't buy this, I will quit. Any guesses on if that person was still working there? The answer would be no.
$1 million or let the guy go that makes pittance compared to that.
Gosh, I don't know what to do here. Yeah, it really is something where there's a balance point. I mean, I don't want you to be so fearful for your job that you never speak up. But at the same time, I don't want you to be so overblown in your own little world that you make unrealistic demands. The funny thing is, this is the real tragedy, is that they actually did buy the software later on. Eventually they saw, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense. This will actually save us, like, I think they figured like $10 million that they would save in year one or something. It was kind of that level of insanity where it was actually that good of a fit. But the way it was presented to them was so abrasive and so um, not about them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's all about presentation.
So,
You mentioned the smart SE will, empower the employees.
mhm.
The smart SE will also not be the one presenting to
Yes.
whether it's the CFO or CEO, whatever, because it's not about you. It's about making your customer the hero. So you want to prepare them, get them fully ready to be able to sell what you're selling. You want them to be the ones that are selling. They will be eternally grateful to you for that. Whether it works out or not, you have made a friend for life by being able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think in kind of talking about the new technology and things like that, if you're willing to take it on and people are willing to do it, as a sales professional, for example, getting somebody a slide deck and say, here, put your own spin on this, put it to your management. That goes a long, long, long way.
It does.
And I have seen the back and forth on this. I see, let's not name names, but certain larger companies that hold on so tightly to their IP that they can't even give somebody a slide deck to present on their behalf. That they're so afraid that somebody's going to misrepresent them or something like that, that they end up losing sales because they won't just let the IT people give an internal presentation. They just insist on an audience with the CIO. Well, like I was saying earlier, a lot of CIOs, their default answer is no. A lot of CIOs will not meet with vendors. They just simply will not. I'm thinking of 5 names in my head right now of CIOs that will not meet with vendors ever. They have a policy where if the IT staff has to present to them, they will not let a vendor in the door. Like literally, they will not let a vendor cross the threshold into their office. And for a salesperson, I don't know what would be more frustrating. That's like worse than getting a no.
Yeah.
But if they can't adapt, it's a I get
Oh yeah.
We haven't even talked about, and we probably shouldn't because we're an hour and 13 minutes into this, but there's another element of this. And I see this with sales staff all the time. There's a lot of sales turnover when there's new features. This happens a lot of times. I think of how many people left when VMware made a shift from what was it? Before View. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I can't even think about it anymore.
The name of that product.
Yeah,
I know.
whatever. I mean, it was one of those things where I saw people. I'm done. I'm out of here. Same thing with Citrix when they made a big shift in names to be descriptive instead of branded. I mean, what I resisted it myself. I was like, this is stupid, and I remember several, you know, interesting dialogues with some of the staff at Citrix with the CTAs and CTPs and whatnot. It was very interesting time, but the bottom line is it kind of works, but with the sales end of things, I'm like, oh, I have to explain this to my customers. I don't want it anymore. And they just rage quit, and that's a tough thing to get into. It's like, are you really going to just give up just because there's something new? And again, we just have to realize that this ain't going away. This is not something that we're going to say, okay, now we're done. Now we're long-term service branch on the names. They've changed the name of long-term service branch, for crying out loud.
Well,
we can't even decide on that.
Changing names is what Citrix does.
Yeah.
And boy, that's amazing, that story, because it's just a name change in the end. I mean, we joke about Citrix making changes. I mean, Zen has been the longest they've ever kept to a naming convention.
Think of the resistance
over the change of a name with no change in functionality at all. I mean, that's it's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah. But I'm remembering back to the blowback from that.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't even spell it right. Now, on the same token, I mean, there is something where not taking it seriously enough is a factor too. I mean, I did have, there's a story of a salesperson that, would not, just refused to spell it XEN. Just would not do it. And went to a CIO and said, hey, we need to talk about your Citrix Zen ZEN licensing. Yeah. What do you think that CIO said? Get this guy out of here.
Well,
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Enough, people think of, when they see Zen, that was like Novell.
Sure. Yep. That's what I thought of initially.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, if you started off in your career selling tape drives or something like that, or administering backups, and now you're doing this other thing, you have to realize that you've made a change. Why would you expect other things not to change too? And you can't, if you're going to be stubborn, I don't know why I started talking like that, but if you're going to be stubborn about where you are and kind of hold that ground, then there's no room for a changing world around you to do anything with that, and your world will get smaller and smaller and smaller. That's just the way this is going to be.
Exchange admins. Exchange admins. Sorry. I know they're still out there, but
yeah.
Oh man, the fight to go Office 365, Gmail, whatever. Just and this all goes back to, I constantly push it. You got to be constantly learning. Doesn't mean you need to be the expert. Don't need to know it all. You just need to be ready for the next step. I mean, it's either going to come your choice or it's not going to be your choice at some point. But you do need to try to keep up with trends and in ideas and the next big thing. I mean, that's, to me, a lot of people fight cloud, but realistically, cloud's not going anywhere. And I'm sorry, cloud is going to become more and more important to organizations as time goes on. Yeah. That's, to me, just the bottom line. You can't just...
And who knows? We got to keep in mind too that, years ago, we centralized everything. We had all information on a single mainframe server in this closet, in this secret room that nobody ever went into, that, you had to, cross yourself 3 times to get in the door. All that kind of, it was like so precious. And then things went back to the desktop, the individual computers.
Client
server. And then we brought them back. And now they're in the cloud. For us to think that there's not going to be another innovation of some sort or some sort of shift beyond the cloud is straight up asinine. Yep. There will be another shift. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm not a I'm not a seer of future events. I can see certain things coming, sure, but as far as like where technology is going to go, I don't know. I think there may be some world changing event of some sort that changes things. There may just be a level of frustration with various things that we just say, we're just going to bring this all back. I don't know, but we have to be ready for that. We have to be willing to accept that, because honestly,
and the biggest one in our lifetime
mm-hmm.
is the change from DARPANET, right? That was the name, to internet, to the web. I mean, think about that. DARPANET had been around 20, 30 years already.
Yeah.
It's mainly educational, military, very
mm-hmm.
private. Then they opened it up.
You had to say in our lifetime, didn't you? You just had to do that.
Sad, isn't it? But it's true. This is a massive change. This is like Ford and assembly line type thing. It really is. I mean, for good or bad, the internet is what it is, and the web is what it is. Think of where we'd be today if that didn't happen. If the DARPANET had stayed private, we wouldn't be doing this right now.
Right.
There are shifts, and those shifts may already be in play. It's just going to take a slight change, and suddenly it could explode.
Yeah.
So for knowledge, my belief is, you want to take time to train. I don't mean you take all your free time and sit in on training. You can't rely on a company to pay for training. And I don't mean that in a bad way or a good way. It's just, you can't rely on them because, maybe they don't have the money for it now, especially right now with the pandemic and everything. It is so worth your while to invest in yourself, to keep yourself relevant. Don't fight to the death for something that for a technology that is going away. If you see the trend, and I use Exchange as the classic example. If you see the trend of companies starting to move their email into the cloud,
mm-hmm.
Be smart about it.
Yeah.
But don't fight it so hard that you're just costing yourself a job.
It's funny. On the other side of this, there's a video that I haven't actually released yet. I haven't edited it, and I just realized it's a year old now. I filmed it on the way back from Synergy last year, Citrix Synergy. And in that, I talk about, this is a good topic for another day probably, but the concept of, okay, is the discussion every single year, who's going to buy Citrix? And I was like, stop it, and when you go to the bottom of that, it's really nervousness about, am I going to have to learn something new? Am I have to give up on this? If I have to, what if Microsoft buys Citrix and they want to push WVD and that's all it's going to be, and Citrix is just going to go away, that sort of thing. First of all, you're solving a problem that doesn't exist yet. So that's one thing about that, is like, you can kind of see which way the winds are blowing, but at the same time, it's being aware of it and being adaptable to it, but not trying to adapt in front of it, not trying to be in front of a change like that. If you're good at that, you're much better off in the stock market than you are in IT. Much better. If you're good at it. I'm being snarky. Nobody's good at that. Ain't nobody good at it. Otherwise, I've got some stock picks for you. But here's the thing. When it comes to that level of thinking of, those are the extremes, like, thinking of, I'm frustrated about the level of change that's coming, or that's happening right now, or I'm so fearful of the change that's coming that I'm, always on the lookout for the next thing. those are both bad.
Yeah.
Those are both bad. And the reality is, again, it's the same solution for both. And you said it actually. And the funny thing is, I think at least two people that were on this broadcast actually were with me in a Ask Me Anything session yesterday, and we talked about this. Is that companies might not invest in you, so you do need to invest in yourself, and you do need to up your skill set on your own. And I don't know, I again, this is probably a discussion for another day of why this is exactly, but a lot of times we get into this mindset of, if the company doesn't pay for me to learn it, I'm not going to learn it, and I don't know why we think that, because it's not like the company's training you to learn a software that they wrote and they're the only ones that have. That's usually not the case. It's usually an industry, wide industry adopted technology that you can learn and become much more valuable to the company and to everybody else. I mean, it's kind of one of those weird dynamics that if you're willing to learn, not just how a technology works, but why it works. I think that, and my soapbox is about to break from the weight that I'm putting on it today. I apologize, but the honest truth is, if we're only focused on learning the technology, we're only focused on learning the screws to turn, then we're not getting any value.
What is, if we're only focused on what's required of us, I think
that too, but also just like we think the value is in how to do it. The value is not in how to do it. The value is learning the process, and being able to be, get your Google foo on, get it good. I made a career out of Google. If Google didn't exist, again, like we were saying, then I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be, who knows what I'd be doing. I mean, I'd probably be back to flipping burgers or something. I don't know. But the reality is that I learned why things are important as far as things work and what the value is of those business systems. And then from there, I applied the Google foo and said, okay, I need to know how to do this. I don't know how to do it right now. What's a best way I could find that information and look for somebody else that's had the same problem, that sort of thing. And just to have a good acumen about that, of saying, it's not that I know right away. It's like we were saying, a couple of weeks ago, it's like embracing that spirit of, I don't know, and that's okay. I will go find out. I will be that one to do that. But as far as investing in your learning, I think a criteria, and this is something that I'm changing a lot of what I'm doing to morph to this as well, is it's not about the knowledge. It really is about the methods. It's really not the, turning the screws, all that kind of stuff, the things to click. It's about, why do you turn the screws? Why do you click? Why? If you don't have that, then that's not really a foundation. That's just a temporary thing that gets you a certificate. Oh, I said that out loud, didn't I? Mic drop. Okay. Got into rant mode. We should probably call it a good, it's great that we just get into these discussions and that we just keep them going and that sort of thing. But the reality is, eventually we need to get on with our day and let other people get on with their days as well. But we will have another discussion next week. We'll be here next Friday. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube thing. Click that little bell right next to it. So you need to do both things. You need to hit the subscribe and then hit the bell so you get notifications of when we're going live next, because you never know.
Yeah. So next week, like DJ said, different day, different time. And once again, we're going to be butting right up against the EUC happy hour. If you want an invite, we will not post it publicly. Twitter, email, LinkedIn, whatever, let us know. We will get you that information.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to, a couple things actually. Right now, I am actually tentatively scheduled for next week, Friday the 29th, to do a CUG-C webinar on app layering technologies. Not a good versus bad or anything like that. This is a architecture deep dive into the technologies, so that the goal is to have everyone have a good baseline of understanding what the technologies are, why they are the way they are, and the different uses for those technologies. There's a lot of confusion on whether it's Citrix app layering, Liquidware Flex app, VMware app volumes, about the why they exist, what the problems they're solving are, and how they do that solving. And so I think that'll be great for everybody. And to come back to the SC stuff, and really the soft skills, I'm working on training that will go over much more in depth to what we've covered today. DJ and I are collaborating on that as well, and hopefully we'll have something to start working with people on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is an exciting time. I mean, honestly, I was thinking about this last night. I almost couldn't sleep thinking about this. That there's so much that I feel like I can do, and it'll just be an endless array of stuff. So I think just hang on with us. It's going to be an interesting ride. We got a lot of things going on. But honestly, if there are any kind of questions you have or comments or things that you want to know about, just let us know in the comments, email us, that sort of thing. Message us on Twitter. I'm on as the Citrix Coach, at least for a little while longer. Spoiler alert, I'm going to be changing that soon because I keep changing. I had an account called the Zen Master. That's still there. But shifting. Or you just message me on my personal, it's non-techie, DJ Eshelman. I answer both. And then Jeff Pitch as well.
Yeah, pretty much everything is at Jeff Pitch. So
yeah, it's good to have that personal branding. Ooh, personal branding. We should talk about that one of these weeks.
Yeah.
What are we talking about next week anyway?
You guys want us to dive into, be more than happy to. We are, know even a little bit about it. We can give opinions.
We can talk about anything.
It is true. It may not be accurate, but we can talk about it.
We're good at talking. We're good at the wordses.
Yeah.
What are we talking about next week? I'm trying to remember.
I don't even know if we've set.
We might not have
that yet. The week after, we've got a guest in a different time. I don't know if you want to announce the guest yet or not. But
let's wait.
Okay. Well,
but on Thursday the 4th, we're looking at a guest to join us, and we'll be talking through a performance reviews and that sort of thing, how to approach those and that sort of thing. It'll be a fascinating discussion. So, but for next week, I could swear we had something written down, but I'm not seeing it. So who knows?
I'll bet you're thinking of our guest.
It was, we were talking about remote work. Should your employer let you work remotely? What are the benefits, not only from supporting a remote staff, but what are some benefits of you working remotely versus being there in person as a team, and some back and forth on that. So that's our discussion for next Friday.
I'm old. I forget, dementia kicks.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for being with us. We always have a lot of fun doing this, probably too much fun, but can you have too much fun? I'm not sure you can.
I don't know. An hour 33, people are probably thinking we're having too much fun.
Probably. I mean, I think that maybe why we need to shift to the evenings and make this a virtual happy hour kind of thing. Maybe we should do that. We're always up for your comments. Any suggestions about when we could do this broadcast? We're very much willing to shift this around to when people would be able to most attend. But I think some people just the feedback I've been getting is like some people just like having this on the background and going while they're working. So we're cool with that too.
Yep.
But if we can do anything for you, just let us know in the comments, and we will do our very best to ignore you. I mean, to do something for you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. And yeah, hey, have a great week.
Hey, we'll see you next week.
All right.
Cheers, everybody.